free to mention that they can mute themselves. But thanks for everyone that's attended this morning. And we have Dan Brooks from the Chamber. He's going to be going over some of the resources that they have, and I'll turn it over to Dan.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me today. Hope everybody's doing well, adjusting. Obviously, it is nice not having to get prepared in the mornings to head in. I don't have the issue of hair anymore, so I wouldn't have that anyways, but it is nice. My wife and I were actually talking to my parents the other day about kind of our adjustment, and she made the comment that, yeah, he basically gets out of bed, gets out of his sleeping jammies and into his work jammies. So it's been, that element has been nice, but certainly we've been working hard trying to make sure that, we have a good response here in Billings and Yellowstone County, and can get primed and ready to, when the time's right, get our economy back up and running. So as far as what I wanted to talk about today, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of our reaction and what we've been working on to make sure that folks have the right resources that they need, and then how are we moving and shifting and transitioning over to the restart and the reopening, and what might that, well, maybe not necessarily what that might look like, but what are we considering as we start that dialogue. So let me start off by talking about how we've been providing some resources for our businesses here to kind of navigate the storm. And I'm trying to talk and spell at the same time. Let me do this one at a time here. All right, so I've put the website URL in the chat box for you, but I'll go ahead and share my screen, and I'll show you what we've got as a unified website here. And all right. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? All right, excellent. So in the immediate kind of aftermath of our social distancing and stay-at-home orders response, everybody kind of went to their own corners and put up their own websites with information. There was a bunch of different sharing on social media. There was a lot of questions on, who's got the right or the best information. So we had collaborated with Big Sky Economic Development and our Unified Health Command and some of our businesses as well to say, hey, let's make a one-stop shop for everybody to come and get good information on financial programs, resources that they need, latest events, those kinds of things. And so this is what we've put together, largely the work of Kelly McCandless in our office and Melanie Schwartz over at Big Sky Economic Development. So you'll see here we've got everything from financial assistance, employment resources, community resources. We've got our latest news, calendar of events. There we go. But I just kind of want to go through this really briefly, just so you know exactly where to go for some of this information that folks are really looking for. The first thing is this up here, this update regarding the Paycheck Protection Program and Economic Impact Disaster Loan Programs. Right now, they've actually stopped taking any more applications because both programs have essentially run out of money. So as Congress goes back into negotiations and is deliberating on what might come from a COVID-4 or a fourth phase economic recovery package out of DC, this is certainly going to be one of those topics, and we've been chatting with our representatives about needing that additional funding to help out our small businesses. So I also wanted to point this out because this is updated every day. Our folks that are working on this are trying to make sure that there's no lag in the information that's getting put out. So you can come here for the latest information. I also want to talk real quick, and I kind of mentioned this at the beginning, but really this is about not necessarily just how we're responding and reacting to the crisis, but how do we move forward in the next days, months. Here we've got it outlined. What's the guide for the development of our community's next 6 months, really, and how are we looking at that as our restart program? So I just want to, it's not on here. Actually, let me scoot down to the bottom, and we do have this listed. This is our local economic response and recovery team, led here by Steve Arviskow at Big Sky Economic Development. You'll also see our CEO, President John Brewer's on there, as well as the CEO of the Downtown Billings Alliance. We've got members of our industry represented on here, Taylor Brown with the Northern Ag Network and a former state legislator. So we've got a pretty good crew of folks on here. And I would also mention that there is some crossover here between the folks that are on our economic response and recovery team and folks that are looped into these discussions and the governor's economic response team. So we do have some representation that's both working here locally and that's working there with the governor's team as well, making sure that our needs here in Yellowstone County are well represented. All right, so okay, that's kind of just chatting about the path forward. As far as financial assistance, obviously the big programs that have been talked about are that PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, and the Economic Impact Disaster Loans. Again, both need additional funding into the coffers before those loan applications are taken again. But here's where you can come to find out more information on those programs once they get refunded. We've got employment resources on here as well. A couple links to the Montana sites here, Montana Works, Montana Department of Labor and Industry. And we've got it broken out for some assistance and resources for employers and employees as well. So if people are just looking for that information, maybe not necessarily in your employ, you can send them here. As part of, let me just take a quick step back. The Congress's three-step or three-phase COVID response. The first phase, or the first bill that was passed, was really focused on how do we provide the funding and essentials for the kind of medical side of the response. The second phase really dealt with some unemployment, paid sick leave changes to the law. And then that third phase was the CARES Act, the big funding for small business, had the paycheck stimulus as well. If you got your $1,200 or $2,400 check recently, that was part of that third phase. But this here has some information on that second phase, which was called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So if you have questions about the implementation and the regulations and guidance around that, this will take you to the U.S. Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division kind of FAQ page, right? So it really details who's covered, what are the qualifying reasons, the duration for leave, and then gives kind of some situations here that you can use for a little bit of guidance. So that's a good resource there. Then moving on to our community resources. This will take you to our Unified Incident Command. That's the collaboration of our kind of medical providers here in Yellowstone County, who are really our kind of institutional experts on our medical response. So feel free to check that out if you're interested in that. The City of Billings actually has done well to update their website here on their coronavirus response. They've got some good latest information on here, as well as kind of the worldwide information if you'd like to check that out. I'll move down here because I want to get to, here's, this is just kind of pulling some of the latest news as well. If you want to check back to see what's relevant and timely. And then I would also point and advise you to check back often the calendar of events. If you want to participate in some webinars that are going over really a lot of information that's relevant to our businesses, this is going to be the place that you'll want to check out. It's got some webinars here from small business, entrepreneurs, and I would recommend that you sign up here for our newest webinar series here. This is put on by Kinetic Marketing, called Marketing in the Age of Social Distancing. Really going to try to help folks navigate through the evolution into really having everything online here. So be sure to check that out. That's free to register for that, and it's an online webinar series. So, and then if we haven't covered something that's on here that you've got questions about, please don't hesitate to email. This will go off to our team, and you'll either get connected with the right person with that information, or we'll make sure that we'll make sure that that gets listed on here in the future. So that would be a big help if we're missing something. So again, here's our economic response and recovery team. Also feel free to reach out to any of these folks if you happen to have connections and let them know your story, right? We want to make sure that we're not missing anything that's going on in our community, making sure that all those gaps of needs are filled and that people's voices are getting heard. And so to that point, I would just add here before kind of, I guess, opening it up for questions, I want to talk a little bit about what else the Chamber's been doing to try to make sure that people's voices are getting heard. We've had a number of teletown halls here that we've been connecting our membership and even just our business community. It's been open to everybody, not just our members. To folks like our two senators, our Congressman Gianforte, to Chris Kukolski, our city administrator. We had a teletown hall on tourism. And I've brought up our chamber blog page to show you where you can come to see any of those past teletown halls that we've had. Here's just from our homepage, billingschamber.com. You can click on our blog, and that'll take you here to where we've got all those listed. So you missed the teletown hall with Attorney General Tim Fox. You can click on it here. It'll take you to the recording so you can watch that. But this was an opportunity for not only us to get that direct information from our elected officials, but then to ask questions as well of what they're doing, how they're working for us in our business community. Beyond that, we've also had a number of recent, roundtable's the right word, I guess here, but really trying to make sure that we've got some very industry specific information and concerns from our retailers, from our restaurants, from our hoteliers, from our another big industry that's been hit, entertainment, obviously, as people aren't congregating and gathering. But really making sure that we've got all those concerns that we can then take to our economic response and recovery groups, that we've been talking with our congressional delegation. We've been talking with the governor's team as well, trying to make sure that those needs are met and that those voices are being heard. And I've got quite a lot of notes, but on some of those meetings. But I just want to let you know what some of those concerns are, in case you've got the same concerns. Just kind of want to give you that reassurance that these are being noted. And then if there's anything that we're missing and that you would like us to also be looking to address, please let me know. But for the most part, concerns really fall into one of about 4 or 5 buckets. The first being workforce concerns. namely, how do we get people back into the workforce? And part of this is due to, as I understand, unemployment benefits are really pretty good right now. So folks like in our hotel industry have started reaching back out to try to see if they can bring people back on, and have been met with little success because of the good unemployment benefits that people are receiving. So that's a little bit of an issue right now. Another thing in regard to workforce is not only how do we bring folks back into work to let them know that, hey, conditions are safe, you can come back, but there's going to be a substantial cost to retraining workforce, right? Especially if you've got to bring back on new employees. Not only do you have to teach them the business, but you'll probably also have to teach them new COVID-19 mitigation measures. So there's going to be a substantial burden on our business community to just get back up and running in that regard. Another concern is any additional regulatory or legal liability concerns. Any of our businesses that are in the business of gathering people, whether that's entertainment or restaurants, do have some concerns about, hey, if we open up and somebody contracts the virus or brings the virus into our establishment, are we legally on the hook for the protection of everybody here? So we want to make sure that that there is clarity in the law to protect our businesses for some of those events that are really outside of their control. Another big concern is supply chain. With everything pretty well shut down right now, it's going to take a while to get those chains of resources back up and running. And so if every hotel, not only in Yellowstone County, but within the state and within our region, is all looking for the basics, potatoes, lettuce, etc. It's going to take a while for everybody to get back up and running in that regard as well. So that's one of the things that they're looking at. And then the last two items are, one, how do we motivate consumers to get back out and let them know that, hey, not only are things safe to go back out, but now is the right time to come back out and start spending money and get the economy humming along again. And then the last one is additional financial support, not only from our state, but from Congress as well. I kind of led off here with the fact that the PPP and EIDL monies have been expended, and so we need some more there to ensure that our small businesses can continue on. But we'll be looking at that and monitoring and lobbying our elected officials to make sure that, regardless of the extent of this, that we're going to have folks primed and ready to go when everything's ready to get started again. So that was, I guess, a lot more talking than I suspected I would do, but would ask, what have we missed? Are there additional concerns that we should be looking at? Is there anything that we need to add to our website? And just what's everybody hearing from the community? Do I need to take people off mute? Because I think people put themselves on mute.
I think if everyone knows how to take themselves off mute, if you have a question or comment, I'll kind of start. Dan, I know this has been more of kind of an economic discussion, but I'm just curious, with it being the election year and anything that's going to be showing up locally on the ballot, what kind of conversation has the chamber had about what the impact's going to look like for that?
Well, I think kind of the first hurdle of elections has, we've gotten past that, in that discretion of how to manage the primaries has been sent out to election administrators. And actually each of Montana's counties, their election administrators said, we're going to do an all mail-in ballot. So we actually talked with, let me share my screen again here. Talked with our Yellowstone County Elections Administrator, Brett Rutherford, about this, and just want to make sure that we were putting out good information to the community on how to make sure that they're essentially ready to vote. All right, I'm back up, I think. So this should be on here. All right, 4 things that should be known about the primary election. You can access this on our blog, but really, it is make sure you're registered to vote by May 26th, so a little over a month away. Just make sure that your mailing address is correct, because if you are already registered, there's should be nothing more that you got to do. Those ballots will just come straight to you, even if you weren't prior to this primary election an absentee voter. So they're also going to put on pre-postage here for the return envelopes for the ballots, so you won't have to put a stamp on it. And then we also want to make sure that everybody fills out their ballots correctly. So check in on the voting instructions if you haven't voted absentee before. As far as kind of other considerations for the elections, one issue that I've heard come up is how do folks that have ballot initiatives get their ballot initiatives on the ballot if you can't be out collecting signatures? So some would say that, hey, we need to make sure that happens. Others would say, well, we got to figure out a way to do it more online. I don't know what the answer is on that one, and I'm certain that our elections administrators working on that, trying to figure out how do we make sure that people still have the option and the availability to do that.
Hey, Dan.
As far as our general election, I would be really hopeful that by then we're back opened up, ready to have folks out and potentially go to their polling places if need be, but with some good mitigation measures in place, with some cleaning, making sure that folks aren't going there and not observing social distancing, et cetera, just to make sure that people aren't putting themselves at risk simply by taking the initiative to get out and vote.
Thank you.
Hey, Dan, this is Carrie Olson. Hey, I know that a couple of initiatives are online. They just announced it like 2 nights ago on Q2. The pro-recreational marijuana initiative is online. It's an e-petition. So I'm sure that we'll see more of those moving forward.
Carrie, are you sure though? I thought that story was about them trying to be able to do it that way. I didn't think it had been approved to be that way.
I thought for sure it was approved. I mean, I can call Ted Dick, the guy who's in charge of it, and ask. But I thought for sure it got approved, and they were just sending out the link to everyone to sign.
Okay, I heard it differently, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm not sure either way. Somebody else, what are, I guess I'm a little bit outside the world of realty. However, I've heard that commercial realty is probably going to be okay, at least for the next 6 months or so, but residential is probably going to be the first one to take a hit. Is that pretty well reflective of reality, or what are you guys hearing?
Anyone wants to step in and talk about this? I think our inventory is down, but we're still seeing stuff come on the market. We're still seeing stuff go under contract and successfully close. We're still kind of in that short time frame where I think any of the adjustments that have been made in the financing realm, any tightening on underwriting guidelines, I don't think we've necessarily quite felt that yet, but and I don't know, I'd love to hear any other perspectives. At least from my perspective right now, I don't see any sort of major hurdle or slowdown.
So I would just follow up and ask then, I suspect people that were in the process of buying a house probably still going to go through and buy a house. But if let's say our status quo continues for the next 3 to 4 weeks, then are you looking at a pretty substantial slowdown in the residential market? And I mean, any even close to guesses on what that might look like?
I don't think we can know for sure. I think even if it continues for a few more weeks, once things are open back up, I think we'll have a resurgence fairly well. The hardest part will be the financing. If people, of course, if they've lost their jobs and they were in the process, that's going to be an issue. When it's time to get, lenders are looking at verification of employment up until the time they are funding the loans now, which is beyond closing even, which we had happen back in 2008, 2009 time as well. But that's going to be the hardest part, is when are they going to relax those financing restrictions they put in? They've upped, minimum credit scores and things on some programs. That'll keep some people out, but a lot of our market, I think, will come back strong because people still need to buy houses. I've had 2 clients call me Wednesday. One's moving back here that transferred out of town years ago, and another one's getting divorced. I mean, there's always those things where people need to buy a house, and we may see a slowdown in people who are thinking, I'm just going to buy just because I want a new house, don't need a new house, but we're always going to have people that need to buy houses. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, with the lending, I've had to juggle a few buyers over to other lenders just because of those minimum credit scores with who they were previously pre-qualified with, kind of pushed them right out, and it was the mad scramble to see who hadn't changed their minimum credit score, stipulations. And we've been able to keep pretty much, I think I've only lost one, and they were just hanging on by a thread anyway. And that's been about it. Other than that, we've been, we may have a little bit of delays, but we're still getting to the finish line. So I don't know. We'll see. Inventory is still low enough, I think, that and we still have an active enough buyer pool that I think we'll keep plugging along for the time being. Like you said, though, it just is a matter of job outlook over the long term here. If we're back up and running, in 3-4 weeks, full capacity, we might be fine. But I don't know. I think there's so much uncertainty yet that we just got to take it one day at a time.
I'd chime in too. I just think it really also comes down to kind of consumer perception and confidence and how long or short this is going to be. I think, at least from a lot of the people that I've spoke with, they feel confident that this isn't going to be a majorly long-term thing and it's not going to affect us drastically. Now, if that changes, I could maybe see, a shift in buyer activity and maybe even seller activity. But as of right now, I clients that I've worked with, other agents that I've talked to, people seem to be staying fairly positive. So I think that is kind of what's still driving the market right now.
Yeah, I think that Billings, we're kind of in this little bubble here that we're a little bit more insulated from a lot of the ripples I think that we feel that other people have felt. Like, I know a friend of mine, he's over in Michigan and he can't even go do showings. So we're still out and about, kind of going about our business the same way, just different, I do think something that we're going to see down the road here are probably short sales and some people having to get out of homes. I've already had conversations with clients that, or had people call me that I've talked to previously that now are saying, okay, I have to get out now. Like there is some different motivations than we've seen before, but I feel like Billings is still doing well. So.
And I think we'll see a real difference down the road in people, and like you talked about motivations, why do they want to move? And, frankly, I think a lot of people will think, well, I don't want to take on more debt down the road. And so that might keep people from selling and, you know, move up buyers and things. If they can get by with the space they have for their family, I think we'll see that happen, which will then result in a further constriction of inventory, which is then going to bring prices up. So I think it's the long-term effect could be really interesting. I just think people are going to be a lot more cautious on the way they spend their money for a while. We all tend to forget things after a while. And when things are going good, we, you know, rah, rah, let's go spend all our money. But I think we're going to see some people like me. I kind of feel myself being one of those depression era people now. Like, I'm not spending any of my money, you know, so, which isn't good for our economy, but you get to worrying about how you're going to pay your bills and you get tighter on things.
So if I could ask, has the overall industry been doing some surveying, polling on people's attitudes towards where they might want to move in the future? And I'm kind of connecting this because we've seen with the tourism industry that most recent polling suggests that people are really starting to shift their thoughts of where do we want to go on vacation, and moving away from your more populated destinations, even moving away from international travel, even looking 6-12 months down the road, and are thinking, let's go to essentially Montana-esque places, the wide open spaces, the big skies, the places where we can go see national parks and be able to socially distance. Maybe that trend doesn't continue, but if it does, that means that we've got a pretty good outlook as far as restarting our tourism industry. I'm curious if maybe some indicators of polling or surveys from larger realtor organizations might be showing the same kind of indicators, or is it way too early to even be asking the question?
You know, I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything come across. I'd be curious, Carrie, if we've seen anything from MAR or even NAR. But I'd be curious if anyone else has seen anything. I know for myself, I'm with a boutique brokerage, so at least from a kind of corporate standpoint, I don't have access to anything specific like that.
No, NAR or MAR hasn't done any polling like that as of yet. But it would be interesting though to see that. I mean, I have talked to realtors in the eastern part of the state, and I've talked to about 2 of them had said that they had people calling them from New York, wanting to relocate to Montana right now because of the virus and try to slow down their lifestyle. They have the ability to work from home. They would like to just like live in the wild, in the wild west. So, and we have a couple realtors in the Northwest advertising for people to come quarantine in Montana and just stay in Montana. But no, as of right now, there has been no polling, but it would be an interesting poll to do, I believe.
Yeah, the wild west. Can you imagine our new marketing campaign being Will Smith and in his cowboy getup?
Please do that, Chamber. Please do that.
I think you brought up an interesting point, Carrie. I mean, I know so many companies have virtual working options, but I think this has really shown companies how virtually we can work. And I think about the Better Off in Billings campaign, trying to bring people to Montana and people that maybe work for companies out of these larger metropolitan, more expensive areas, the opportunity to potentially work virtually and live in our community. So that would be an interesting kind of thing to follow and see how that might affect us. Because I could imagine that people, if they can live here and have a cost of living that might be significantly less and still be able to maintain the same career and job that they've had. And it'll just be curious what comes of this. I think it could potentially be a positive thing for some people and for some companies and some employees. So.
Hey, Dan, have you seen anything where, even around here, kind of to piggyback off you, Corinne, with businesses here in Billings that aren't necessarily thinking about opening fully back up just due to, oh, hey, we can work virtually, you know, and keep their employee base at home. I mean, I don't even know how that's going to kind of pan out kind of with the attitude that Montanans typically have of, you know, wanting to be there and touch and see firsthand, you know, or do the handshake thing. But, you know, are there businesses here that aren't going to open up you know, a main point again, you know, a business location?
Yeah, I really haven't. If you know, I would just sort of suspect that um, most folks are probably going to look at ways that we can implement more remote work policies. And you know, we had at the chamber, anyways, we had a pretty, I guess, flexible schedule for a lot of our employees that could work remotely or work from home, especially when, you know, dealing with youngsters out of school or something like that. I think we'll probably see a shift of some employment in Billings work to work into more of those flexible schedules. But I still think at the end of the day, you know, people do enjoy the handshake and talking to people face to face. And I think that in sort of in the realm of sharing ideas and having new innovations and breakthroughs in industries, I think most of those happen in face-to-face conversations. So people are going to want to get back together, even if there are some more flexible schedules and routines that are implemented in our businesses.
I participated in a webinar last week that Stuart Title put on, and it was their chief economist. And he said that he thinks commercial is going to suffer most in real estate, that industrial will do better because they're going to try to bring a lot more manufacturing back to the country, and that residential will be fine. But that, you know, a lot of businesses are going to have a shift in where their employees work, and they're not going to need these huge spaces for employees. He said they had like 75,000 square feet on this floor of this building in Houston, and there were 4 people there. And everybody honestly said could do what they're doing at home. And he predicted that would be the hardest hit sector of real estate, would be commercial, because of shifting of where people work.
Yeah, and I think people are going to maybe move to more of a shared workspace model, where, you know, we don't need all 50 people in the office every day. Maybe we've got 25 in on Mondays and Wednesdays, and the other 25 is there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Friday it's mostly work from home, and just kind of have a schedule like that. Maybe that's the way that a lot of our businesses that have the ability to share workspace or work from home move to.
It'll be interesting to see how lots of segments of working and economy shift after this, finding out that employees can be trusted to be at home and that they are being productive. You know, they're happier maybe. And I know a lot of people who say, God, I don't want to work at home. You know, they hate it. They don't want to be, you know, away from the office. So it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be a kind of a social experiment at this point to see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I would share that it took me a little while to adjust. You know, not having to get dressed up and ready to go in, felt a little bit unproductive, but yeah, I suspect many people have probably gone through the exact same thing. Well, any last questions that I can answer for you? Let me make sure that if something should come up after all this, I just put my email in the chat box for you. Please feel free to shoot me off an email. If I don't have an answer, I'll get you in touch with somebody who does.
Thanks so much, Dan. This was incredibly informative, and we really appreciate your time.
You bet. Thanks
Yes,
for having me.
Dan.
Thank you.
I'll
Thanks,
send you
guys.
my logo right now, Dan.
All right.
Thanks again. Talk to you later.
All right. See you later.
Bye.